Well, what do we have here? A game that's basically kind of like Syndicate, but more action orientated. Yes, Bedlam was released in 1996 by GT Interactive and was one of the first games to utilise the PlayStation mouse. Yes, remember that pointless gadget? Well, this game was one of the first games to use it. That said, this was one of the first games I've played on the PlayStation with Tekken, Ridge Racer Rev and all that, and well, there's no real need for a mouse. I mean, you can actually just play this with a joypad, which is what I've been doing, you know, for the past 10 years or so, actually 13 years, jeez, I'm getting old. So, what's this game actually about? Well, it's a standard Earth versus Aliens thing, but, you know, you're controlling these robots called rats, which is an acronym for something I nearly can't be asked to actually go and check out what though, and basically you run around and you shoot stuff. Kind of like Doom in that respect, because there's lots of switches for you to press, and like, you know, you have to destroy certain force fields before you can gain access to certain areas. Like Syndicate, there are mission objectives for you to complete every mission, and yes, you still have to do the secondary missions as well. They're not optional, which is something I forgot after not playing this game in some considerable time. One thing I've not forgotten though, that this game has 25 levels and also allows you to equip your rats with plenty of weapons. The actual weapon navigation system's really good because like you can actually select more than one weapon at a time, and it's actually relatively well done, especially if you don't have a mouse. I imagine if you've got a mouse it makes the game a lot easier to play, but you know, the game basically controls a bit like Robotron without the mouse, so you know, it's not that much of a big deal. The main selling point of the game though is the carnage, the blood, the explosions, the heavy firepower, the rocking soundtrack. Basically every level essentially has you going up blowing the shit out of everything. So yeah, you know, you can't really complain like that. Of course you could flip that around and argue that it doesn't actually have as much variety as Syndicate then, because you know, Syndicate actually had you doing more than just blowing stuff up. Sometimes you had to kidnap people, sometimes you had to, like, you know, get from one area to the other, but this, no, you're just blowing stuff up. That said though, the levels are very well thought out, although sometimes, as you can see here, you can't see your mech or any of the enemies when you go underneath like bridges or behind buildings and stuff, which is a bit of a problem. Also, I'd like to point out that these missions can either be bone-jarringly long or really quick, depending on if you know what you're doing. The first time you play through a level, it's going to at least take you 10 to 15 minutes to beat it. I mean, it took me 20 minutes to beat this level first time round, purely because I've not played the game in so long. But yeah, like, you know, on the record screen it shows that, you know, the developers beating the fucking level in under 4 cocking minutes, and the par time is 10 minutes. Ugh. But other than that, you know, the game is actually pretty well done. Okay, so it's no Syndicate beta or anything, but it is a very fun game. I should also mention that, you know, you can actually control 3 rats at a time. That's really sort of unnecessary, like, because like while you're controlling one, the other 2 aren't doing anything, and to be honest it's a bit pointless. You might as well just stick with the one guy, because while you're kicking ass with one of the rats, the other 2 are being basically pummeled on by enemies that you can't see because the camera's only focused on one guy and you can't group select with a joypad, which is really fucking stupid. With that said though, I would strongly recommend like checking this game out. Not that it's going to rock your world or anything, it's a fairly simplistic game. My point is that, well, This is one of the PlayStation's most unappreciated titles. It's definitely good for a blast. I mean, there is very little replayability. Once you've beaten all 25 levels, there's very little to keep you coming back, so to speak. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's a fun game, and you can pick it up quite cheap on eBay now. Probably less than a fiver, in fact, I saw it go for today. So, you know, there's no real reason to not check this game out. So go do so immediately.